What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers 1 Deluxe class Bumblebee / B127. Based on the upcoming animated movie, this is a much younger take on the character, but still a pretty neat looking design. So as we check out the details, B is packing a nifty head sculpt, which I guess is a great throwback to his original G1 design. I'm also a big fan of the sick, futuristic Cybertronian chest plate, and surprisingly, despite this figure only being a first pass at this design, he is looking pretty spot on to how he will appear in the movie. The only part of this guy which I honestly can't say that I'm crazy about would be how hollow the inside of his legs are. Now this is mainly due to the way this guy transforms, but to be honest, I really wish that they had redesigned these, because with the exception of these, this figure is looking solid. Not to mention that even the back is looking tidy, with the exception of the inbuilt boosters, which I do like to think of being a great callback to the jetpack. This guy is looking sharp, and to be honest guys, for this being the first entry into this brand new movie line, I do think that we're mostly off to a decent start, but as we did see from some of those Transformers Rise of the Beast figures, this is definitely a design which I wouldn't be surprised to see improved upon once it does come down to the inevitable Studio Series release. Buzzing our way into this guy's accessories, up first we do see the return of Bumblebee's iconic Stinger Blaster, which actually integrates seamlessly into the forearm, so when it does come down to blasting those Decepticons, this B will most definitely be packing a sting. The second accessory is honestly one that's kind of new for Bumblebee, as this did very first show up in the Bumblebee solo movie. This is his energized blade, which to be fair does look kind of sick, although it's unfortunate that he doesn't include a pair, as in the most recent teaser trailer we see this guy single-handedly slicing and dicing those Decepticons. The final and by far most interesting out of the bunch would be B's detachable chest plate. This is so that you can now access his true potential, because packed beneath is a full-blown transformation cock, which is something that appears to be gifted to him by Alpha Trion in the movie. I thought that considering that this guy is a pretty basic mainline release, that was an epic inclusion, and it does lead me to believe that that is going to be a really awesome scene that we're going to see in the movie. Running through the posability of Badassatron, this is honestly where I think the figure becomes kind of a mixed bag. So, to begin with, the head is on a ball joint. This will look up, it will look down, it can tilt side to side, and also turn both left to right. Surprisingly, despite this only being a deluxe class, he is packing some pretty sweet inbuilt butterfly joints. In addition to that, the shoulders have no issues in kicking forwards and kicking backwards, and they can also go out to the side, although to be honest guys, I wouldn't recommend pushing them past this point, otherwise you do run the risk of popping that arm clean off. The elbow can then bend, and surprisingly he is packing ball jointed biceps, which does allow you to make use out of this joint. Unfortunately there is no wrist articulation, and despite how this guy transforms, that is definitely something I think they could have integrated. But despite that, the waist joint is absolutely packing. This has no issues in turning all the way around, so when it does come down to B slicing and dicing those Decepticons, Megatron's forces don't stand a chance. The hips can kick outwards roughly to that far, they can also kick forwards and kick backwards. So when it does come down to B totally rocking the splits on the battlefield, this guy should have no issues in doing so. The thigh can also turn all the way around, there is a pretty decent knee bend, although unfortunately he does lack the now standard ankle joints, and it's a shame because there is clearly a mushroom peg there, although due to the way these have been designed, instead they merely only rock forwards. Although in his defense, I guess those hollow joints are good for something, because you can fake it until you make it. You can totally make use out of those bad boys to get him into some slightly more dynamic poses, but as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to see what Badassatron is truly capable of, now let's put him through the pose test. Bossing our way into some robot mode size comparisons, first up we are whacking out the OG, that is the Studio Series 86 Bumblebee. I thought this would be kinda cool to compare from an evolution standpoint, as this was the very first animated Bumblebee, and here is the most recent version, so honestly a pretty big difference between the two. Speaking of evolution, here we have the live action movie Studio Series B127. I will be honest and say guys that despite this here being a mainline deluxe class, I find it to be way more enjoyable to mess around with in comparison to this incredible incredibly fiddly Studio Series version. Although, I've got to keep it real with you guys, when it does come down to a theatrical take on the character, nothing right now can top the quality of this Studio Series Bumblebee. I think this is easily one of the best made versions of this character that we've so far seen, so it will definitely be interesting to compare the Studio Series version of the TF1 Bumblebee to this Bumblebee. Speaking of a Studio Series comparison, here we have the TF1 Optimus Prime. Now from a scale perspective, I actually think these two size up really well with each other, especially if again we were to go by the most recent teaser trailer. Although when it does come down to quality, as you guys would expect, there most definitely is a disparity between the two. Then finally, just as no review is complete without the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime, here is how he stacks up in comparison to this Cybertronian B127. Buzzing our way into Beast transformation, despite this guy being a mainline release, this is actually packing some pretty neat twists and turns. So for the first step, take a hold of the head sculpt and begin to spin this all the way around until the back is now facing the front. We can then spin around here to Beast's backpack. You are then going to take a hold of the head sculpt and begin to spin this here downwards. Now packed on the inside is a pretty mighty post that is going to very nicely slide into the back of Bumblebee's head. Once that's complete, we can then take a hold of the backpack and make sure that this again does very nicely snap there into place. With that then complete, we can come around here to the chest plate. We are now going to detach this bad boy and begin to hinge it all the way up until this too does very nicely slide into those slots. With that now complete, we can then spin back around to the front. We are now going to make use out of those ball jointed biceps and begin rotating the forearms around until the hollowness is now facing forwards. Again guys, let's now make sure to do exactly the same here for the opposite side. So spin that baby all the way around. Then what you'll do is spin down to the base of Bumblebee. We are now going to take the incredibly chunky feet and begin to hinge these here upwards, just like that. With that then complete, we can then take a hold of the waist joint and also spin this around until the back is now facing the front. Because now we are going to come to the internals of Bumblebee. We are going to begin making use out of those crazy awesome butterfly joints. So for the first step, you are going to take a hold of this joint and angle it here backwards. We can then make use out of this second joint and begin to compress this here all the way inwards, just like that. Then what you'll do is spin around here to the back. Now there is a tab here that should slide underneath the wheel, so we are just going to snap that there into place exactly like this. And again guys, let's now make sure to do the same on the opposite side. So angle this butterfly joint here backwards. Then what you'll do is begin to compress this here all the way in, just like that. Then we will spin around here to the back of Bumblebee, making sure that this tab does very nicely slide there into place. With that then complete, we can spin here to the underside of Bumblebee, and we are now going to combine the arms directly down the middle. With that then complete, we can take a hold of this panel and begin to slide this here backwards until again it does very nicely snap into place. Then what we're going to do is spin around here to the back of Bumblebee. We are now going to make use out of those hollow legs. So you are going to take a hold of the outer part and begin to angle it here outwards, just like that. Then what you'll proceed to do is compress upwards all of the way. Now as we spin B back around here to the front, this tab here is going to slide into this slot here. This tiny little circular port should then snap into that tiny circular post. So begin to slide this here up. You then have to make sure that the fist very nicely slides inside that hollow cutout. And again guys, just make sure that you give this here a nice firm push and hopefully everything should snap into place. So again, let's now do the same for the opposite side. So take a hold of the leg, begin to angle it here outwards. Then we are going to begin to compress, in this case here, downwards all of the way. Then what you're going to do is line up that tab with the circular port and make sure that that there does snap into place. We can then spin here to the back of Bumblebee, ensuring that this tab does lock into place. You are then going to want to spin up here to Beast's backpack. We are first of all going to want to take this, angle it here upwards all of the way like that. Now stored on the underside are a pair of slots which are eventually going to slide into these mighty tabs. So what you guys are going to want to do is take a hold of this back panel, give it a nice firm push, and it will very nicely snap there into place. And there is B127 now fully transformed. Racing his way through the battlefield of Cybertron, here we have Bumblebee now fully transformed into his vehicle form, and surprisingly this is looking sharp. Despite only being a first pass of the design, it is pretty much smack on to the actual CG render. This guy is looking tidy from almost every single angle. This appears to be near spot on to what we have seen from the most recent teaser trailer. I'm also a big fan of the integration of the black racing stripe, which I'm hoping is kind of a throwback to the original 2007 Michael Bay design. And in addition to those inbuilt boosters, B is packing a total of 4 pinned-on wheels despite only being a basic mainline release. So when it does come down to burning energy on the battlefield, B should have no issues in rolling out alongside Optimus Prime. Now, if you are like myself and are a big fan of Transformers Dark of the Moon, then you can totally whack out both of Bumblebee's weapons, combine these bad boys directly down the middle in order to create a souped up stealth mode for Bumblebee, which, judging by his appearance in the Bumblebee movie, honestly I don't think is too far-fetched. Blasting our way into some vehicle mode size comparisons, we are once again seeing the return of the Studio Series 86 Bumblebee. Now, despite me being a big fan of this Cybertronian take, I can't help but think that again it would have been a great throwback had Bumblebee this time round maybe transformed into a full-blown flying saucer, because I honestly can't help but feel as if though we've already done this design when it came round to B127 in the Bumblebee movie. These two are incredibly close. I mean, check them out here from the front. Even the angles I think are quite similar. So again, it would have been cool to have maybe seen that flying saucer make its grand return, but to be fair guys, as I mentioned, I am a sucker for Cybertronian vehicles, so even this I think is looking sick. Here is how he compares alongside the Studio Series Rise of the Beast Bumblebee. So again, despite only being a mainline release, he is absolutely packing in the size department, to the point where again, judging by the most recent teaser trailer, I do think he stacks up pretty nicely paired alongside the Studio Series Transformers 1 Optimus Prime. Then of course, rounding things off completely, we are whacking out the myth, the legend, that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime. And to be fair guys, again, a pretty decent size despite being a part of a full-blown movie line. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers 1 Prime Changes Bumblebee. Overall, Bumblebee is an incredibly enjoyable figure to mess around with, but as I mentioned beforehand, if any of those Rise of the Beast figures are anything to go by, I would imagine that when it does come down to the inevitable Studio Series release, it will most definitely improve upon this design, especially when it comes down to those hollow legs, or at least I hope so. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this brand new B127 down in the comment section below. Make sure to stay tuned for some future Transformers 1 reviews, as they are absolutely gonna slap. I want to thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!